When it comes to Sorry Baby, it's definitely the type of film that has you imagine what empathy and understanding could do to someone if it was offered throughout their whole life and not just when they're a child or vulnerable. So to summarize the film, Agnes is someone who has mainly aimed to have a simple life. She desires to be a lifelong academic to the point of becoming a professor, and in terms of relationships, she's not one who needs much. Her main focus is on her friend Liddy, who pretty much gives her most of her social life and various needs outside of, sexual stuff. But when it comes to sexual stuff, that's kind of what Gavin is for, who is her neighbor. Even though it's kind of clear that when it comes to Gavin, she wants to take things slow and steady because things have happened in Agnes's life. And that's partly what the focus of Sorry Baby's about. It's about Agnes dealing with multiple life changes, sometimes in rapid succession, and trying to find peace amongst that despite how much others are trying to force their discomfort onto her. So when it comes to the characters, I feel like when it comes to the writing performances, it makes it feel like we're watching real people rather than just Hollywood version of real people. And this is the benefit of watching indie movies, is that there's less of a point to make something that feels commercial and more something that feels, whether it makes money or not, is not the goal. It's to bring real life people onto screen and give something different than what's often available, yet at the same time still has this realness and universality to it that can be sometimes hard to find. And perhaps the best way to look at this is when it comes to the movie Bunny Lover, which likely got posted, the video around the time this one did, it gives you very dry and dull when it comes to being subtle and not giving you big time performances that look like they're trying to be accolades worthy. With Agnes, the difference there is she has her moments, but at the same time, it's always rooted in who Agnes is rather than it being for the viewer. Like when there's an incident that happens with her dealing with one of her professors or mentors, you can see how it informs Agnes as a person, but it doesn't dominate who she is. It's something that she adjusts to. It's something that is part of her thought process, but it doesn't become this impediment, if someone has a word, into where her story is going and where she wants it to go. And even in terms of Liddy, what she has going on in her life, including becoming a wife and having a child, you can see, again, it's something that influences Agnes, forces her to change how she lives her life. But it's never something that's as big to do, that's a big blow up, like you would often see when you have these privileged, pretentious people who are characters in New York and something happens and they feel like it's the end of the world. It's always a shift when it comes to Agnes, and you appreciate how it gives you a sense of what real people go through. And even when she has a little breakdowns, I don't think that's the right way to put it, little breakdowns, because she has really good reasons to have them, but it's always something where you can imagine as an adult, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, maybe beyond, having those moments where you've been strong for so long, you've been doing well for so long, where you not only need but kind of deserve to have a moment where you're allowed to fall apart, and sometimes by yourself so you can pick yourself back up, or other times fall apart and have someone who's maybe an older adult or an adult who's doing well right now kind of help build you back up, so it's not always a case of you having to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but instead get the kind of empathy and understanding that allows you to once again be human rather than a cog in the machine keeping it going. So in terms of world-building culture, I will say when it comes to how Sorry Baby operates, it's definitely one of those, you know how things are going to play out. It's not really a film that's trying to present something different than what you're used to in terms of how it shows the world. In terms of Agnes having to go to the cops, go to the hospital to report what happened to her, it pretty much follows what you expect to happen. In terms of creating a culture of what a university is like, especially when one of the professors do something that's criminal, Again, you get people saying the wrong things, stumbling, bumbling, coming off like idiots, and a lot of it's just familiar, not necessarily bland, but again, just like how Agnes has to be rooted in some type of normal realism, so is the environment around her. And it may not be for everyone, but at the same time, it really depends whether you want an ideal world when it comes to movies or you want a realistic one or somewhere mixed in between. With that said, getting to story and pacing, again, we appreciate that there's no desire for this film to play it big. Agnes is someone who stays to herself, isn't much for wanting a socially demanding life, and I wouldn't even call her antisocial. I would say she's just selective. She knows who she melds well with, who she has to deal with, like a character named Natasha who works at the university. And you can see in many ways why she picks and chooses. You have to have some type of network to get to where you want to go if you're someone like Agnes, but at the same time, it breeds animosity, it breeds jealousy, it even breeds some type of rumors when you do get somewhere as shown through Natasha. So with Agnes really pursuing that whole, definitely a bit introverted, extroverted with the people I love, but introverted with people I either have to be cordial with, I don't like. It's, in many ways, it feels like the kind of representation that introverts don't usually get in this form, especially when they want to give us an introvert who has some type of notable reason for being quiet rather than not just being who they are. While the last part was a highlight, when it comes to stories and pacing, the on-the-fence part for us is that this film, for some reason, uses a chapter structure. And outside for the second chapter, when it jumps back to kind of tell you what happened before the events of chapter 1, everything else pretty much goes straight forward. And in my mind, even though this film takes place over a course of 3 years at minimum, chapter structures make more sense when this like major ends to each chapter. That doesn't really exist here, so it just feels like the chapter structure is one of the few ways that Sorry Baby's trying to be dramatic, and it doesn't really work well. So beyond trying to make this seem more like a book, since Agnes is an English major / teacher, in many ways it just feels unnecessary in terms of narrative style. Which leads to the last topic, which is whether or not it has diverse hooks or a rewatch value. And I think the main benefit of Sorry Baby is that it pushes you to focus on the before and after, not necessarily of the what happened. And similar to I Used to Be Funny and also this Fluency that recently came out, I love the fact that Sorry Baby is not trying to really focus on the assault / rape. It recognizes it happens, it doesn't give any type of visuals to it, and it lets you know who this person was before and who the person is after. And it's in seeing that shift that you understand what someone taking your autonomy can do to you, and that between the two films we named and the various other movies and films, plays, etc. that covered it, each person has a different reaction. And in showing Agnes's reaction, you can further get a sense that there's no right or wrong way to react to what happened to you. Instead, you have the right to report it if you choose to, move on if you want to. You have the right to question whether or not what happened was consensual, whether or not, I don't know if that's the way to put it. You have the right to question whether or not you originally wanted what happened, whether or not it got taken. I don't know. That's not the way to put it. You have the right to question the whole entire situation from the beginning to the end, and if you have mixed feelings or emotions about it, that is your right. And it's honestly a struggle to talk about that because, again, everyone has different feelings about what's happened to them, and it's very much a minefield. But I will say I do appreciate the way Agnes handled it, and even when it comes to kind of reclaiming her sexuality through Gavin, it was a beautiful thing to see this man who, while we don't really get to know Gavin's backstory, we do see him not only willing to allow Agnes to be vulnerable, but be vulnerable himself, especially in his own nudity and his potential body insecurities. And it made it so that he wasn't just somebody to help her heal, but you can see in some ways he too was getting something out of this. He wasn't getting to be the hero or anything like that, or the smooth, cool guy. He got to be someone who too went on some kind of journey to the point where he wasn't necessarily trying to walk around swinging all over the place, but also, felt the need to cover up even if he had relations with Agnes in the past. But overall, when it comes to Sorry Baby, I wouldn't say this is for everyone, but those who are willing to get it, it'll be worth the price of it. For what Eva, not sure, but Eva Victor as the writer, director, and lead actress gives is a movie that rarely ever feels like it wants to push a message. Instead, it wants to push not only a sense of its lead's character humanity, but also the humanity that can be shared if people are willing to do so. And while we're not really fond of the chapter way of telling the narrative, outside of that, we're pretty much hooked, and we were pretty much hooked and engaged throughout the whole film. And even in terms of it not going big or grand and mostly being subtle, it figured out a way to make that subtlety a quality that keeps you interested rather than a quality that makes you want to eventually kind of open up a different browser, watch something else, or maybe if you're in the theater, when this comes out in theaters, maybe want to check your phone to see how much time is left or something else.